Lakers executive Jerry West has given HBO 2 weeks to issue an apology and a retraction. West's lawyers sent a letter to HBO and the show's producer Adam McKay yesterday.
Compadres of Jerry West are very upset.
I've wanted to make a video on this for a very long time. I was going to do it after the NBA playoffs, but since a lot of players that were the subject of this show are actually not very happy with this show, I feel like this is the perfect time to make a video on Winning Time, the rise of the Lakers dynasty. Now, if you want more content on this, let me know in the comment section down below, because technically it is a basketball subject, although it's about a TV show. It's a TV show about the Lakers. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Check us out on Discord if you want to tell me you hate my content straight to my face or in a chat. And now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? For those of you guys that have never heard of the show Winning Time, the rise of the Lakers dynasty, it's a American sports drama TV series that was created by Max Borenstein that is featured on HBO Max and is based on the book Showtime, Magic, Kareem, Pat Riley, and the Los Angeles Lakers Dynasty of the 1980s by Jeff Pearlman. And to give you an idea, the premise of the show just chronicles the professional and the personal lives of the 1980s Los Angeles Lakers basketball team, both on and off the court. But to be honest, there is quite the comedic element to this show. In the very first episode, you see the man playing Jerry Buss is none other than John C. Reilly. Yes, not Will Ferrell, but the other stepbrother is the man that is portraying the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss, one of the most beloved owners in NBA history. And at that moment, you could tell that, okay, this show is going to have quite the comedic element to it. The characters are all exaggerated. Dr. Jerry Buss was known for unbuttoning the first 2 buttons down his shirt, but John C. Reilly in his portrayal of him unbuttons like half of his shirt all the way down. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is portrayed as this very standoffish personality, although quite educated. Jerry West seems to be haunted by his past and his inability to win a championship with the Los Angeles Lakers, and a lot of that trauma motivates his decisions, and some of them are hits, some of them are misses, but for the most part, the rationale that he has behind each and every decision makes a lot of sense. You see a young Jeannie Buss being portrayed in the show as well, and probably my favorite character in the entire show is Magic Johnson, whose exaggeration is him being happy all the freaking time, always smiling, featuring the libido of 20 men that are on a steroid cycle. I'm serious. So for the most part, there is a hint of comedy to it, but in addition to that, I'd say that the story that they're telling is more or less true. There's a lot of parts about the Los Angeles Lakers dynasty in the 1980s that I feel like a lot of people, especially my age, being an individual that wasn't even born for one of the best eras in basketball, probably neglected. For example, according to the source material of the show, which is Showtime by Jeff Pearlman, Jerry West didn't want to draft Magic Johnson. It wasn't a slam dunk pick in the entire organization, and the rationale at the time made a lot of sense. The LA Lakers wanted to draft based off of need. They had Norm Nixon, who was just coming off of an all-star season. Magic Johnson wasn't necessarily at the top of their needs. And it even says here, the one thing that Magic Johnson didn't know at the time and wouldn't know until 2 decades later was that in Jack Cook's mind, which is the man that had ownership of the Los Angeles Lakers before Jerry Buss took over, Magic was just merely another good college player in an ocean of good college players. Immediately after the draft, Cook told those within his small circle of confidants that the team could have gone with Sidney Moncrief, the high-scoring guard from the University of Arkansas. That was the advice presented to him by Jerry West, the outgoing coach, who wasn't fully convinced a 6'9" point guard would function in the fast-paced NBA. Jerry West wanted Sidney Moncrief, and he made it very clear to Jack Kent Cook. There was a strong belief, for a brief time at least, that Moncrief, not Magic, would end up a Los Angeles Laker. And don't get it twisted, Sidney Moncrief had a remarkable career as one of the greatest scorers in the 1980s. That's just an example of one of the many things that goes on in this show, how Jerry Buss was taking a huge financial risk investing in a league that was dying for the most part. And ultimately, the individuals that the show is based off of aren't really the biggest fans of the show. According to ESPN, Fox News, CNN, AV Club, and Yahoo Sports, Jerry West and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar have a huge problem with their portrayal in the series. So according to Ramona Shelburne, former Los Angeles Lakers executive Jerry West is demanding a retraction and an apology for what he called a baseless and malicious assault on his character in the HBO series Winning Time, in a letter sent Tuesday evening by his legal team to the network and producer Adam McKay that was obtained by ESPN. West's lawyers allege that Winning Time falsely and cruelly portrays Mr. West as an out-of-control, intoxicated rageaholic, saying that bears no resemblance to the real man. They ask for a retraction no later than 2 weeks from the receipt of the letter, which we're gonna get to it in a sec, but I have a lot of supporting evidence that we could use to decide whether or not we think it's an accurate portrayal of Jerry West's character. Now, the portrayal of NBA icon and LA Lakers legend Jerry West in Winning Time is fiction pretending to be fact, a deliberately false characterization that has caused great distress to Jerry and his family, said Skip Miller, a partner at the Miller Barondis LLP law firm in Los Angeles and the attorney for Jerry West. Contrary to the baseless portrayal in the HBO series, Jerry had nothing but love for and harmony with the Lakers organization, and in particular owner Dr. Jerry Buss, during an era in which he assembled one of the greatest teams in NBA history. Here's where I am a little skeptical, because I don't necessarily think this show is an attack on Jerry West's character. If you watch the show, you might agree with me, because my impression of Jerry West is a person that is incredibly passionate about the game of basketball, that has a tremendous basketball IQ, especially for 1980s basketball, that is fueled by his inability to win a championship during his playing days. Now, it also continues to say that Jerry West was an integral part of the Lakers and the NBA's success. It is a travesty that HBO has knowingly demeaned him for shock value and the pursuit of ratings. As an act of common decency, HBO and the producers owe Jerry a public apology, and at the very least should retract their baseless and defamatory portrayal of him. West's lawyers said that HBO's disclaimer that the series is a dramatization does not insulate the network from liability. So before the show starts, typically there's like this big disclaimer saying, hey, this is all like overly dramatized and a huge exaggeration. But I honestly don't think Jerry West's character is really that bad. Just a guy that is super passionate about basketball, that really wants to win, and throughout his life has kind of gotten into it with the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, literally 2 years ago, you have a voice recording of Jerry West calling the Los Angeles Lakers a show. This past year, the Los Angeles Lakers pulled Jerry West's tickets, which is very odd considering what Jerry West means to the organization. Now, I don't necessarily know what Jerry West's relationship with the Lakers is, but for the most part, it has always been a little interesting. He is credited with assembling the Lakers dynasty of the early 2000s, luring Shaquille O'Neal over from the Orlando Magic and drafting Kobe Bryant. So this is without a doubt one of the greatest basketball minds of all time, whether it's on the court or off the court. The article continues to say, now West's lawyers allege that the series creators acted with legal malice because many scenes in the series showing West's purported rage did not appear in Perlman's book and did not happen. The letter includes statements from former players such as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Cooper, and Jamal Wilkes, as well as Lakers employees such as Claire Rothman, Charlene Kenny, Bob Steiner, and Mitch Kupchak, who have worked with West during the time period covered in the show, denying that they ever saw him commit any of the rage-filled acts or drink alcohol in the office as depicted in the series. Now, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar actually gave a statement on this, saying, instead of exploring his issues with compassion as a way to better understand the man, they turn him into a wily coyote cartoon to be laughed at, said Abdul-Jabbar. He never broke golf clubs. He didn't throw his trophy through the window. Sure, those actions make dramatic moments, but they reek of facile exploitation of the man rather than exploration of character. character. Rothman said that Jerry West treated me and the Lakers and everyone else in the Lakers organization with dignity and respect. I never saw Jerry break or throw anything in anger or rage, nor did I hear anyone ever say he did such things. Mitch Kupchak said that during my time with the Lakers as a player and in the front office, Jerry was always professional, even-keeled, and soft-spoken. He was always positive and encouraging with me. I also found Jerry to be honest and sincere. I never saw or heard Jerry lose his temper with anyone. I also never saw or heard Jerry go on an angry rant or tirade, nor did I ever see or hear Jerry scream or yell at anyone. That was not his personality. Jerry is soft-spoken and does not like confrontation. He always keeps his composure and remains calm even when he has a disagreement with someone. Lastly, I've never heard or seen Jerry ever break or throw anything in anger. West's lawyers say that he is due a retraction, an apology, and damages from HBO and the show's characters because the show goes out of its way to denigrate Jerry West despite his accomplishments as an executive. The letter then goes on to cite the series' depiction of West's role in the drafting of Magic Johnson, saying it implies that West had a personal animus against Johnson and tried to sabotage his selection. West's lawyers said that he only pointed out Sidney Moncrief's scoring ability and that the Lakers should consider him. And then team owner Jack Kent Cooke had the final decision. So instead of seeing the true Jerry West, a brilliant GM who was the architect of one of the great NBA dynasties, anyone who watched the show would be left with the false impression that West is incompetent, that he didn't want Magic Johnson, and this is a fabrication. Contrary to the show, the book leaves readers with the true impression of Jerry as a brilliant and thoughtful GM. Your extreme departure from the book shows malice in your false portrayal. So it seems like Jerry West wants to seek damages and wants a retraction of this is who his character is, but for the most part, there is a disclaimer in the beginning of the show saying that this is a dramatization. Now, ultimately, I didn't view Jerry West as an angry individual. I viewed him as one of those brilliant basketball minds that might be a little difficult to get along with. Now, is his portrayal of his personality 100% accurate? Well, if he's saying this, then maybe it's not. But in addition to this, I don't think Magic Johnson was always smiling. I don't think Jerry Buss had his shirt buttoned all the way down. I don't know if the portrayal of Magic Johnson's father and mother are accurate either. What I'm watching the show for is, for the most part, the storyline and the plot of the show. I'm watching to see the storyline surrounding Jack McKinney, an individual that I'm going to admit I didn't even know existed before the show started. I'm watching to see Pat Riley's rise as a head coach. I'm watching to see how players reacted to Paul Westhead being hired. And I feel like even though this show might be 60% true or even 50% true, that is great content for basketball fans like me to consume. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this? If you watch the show, do you think Jerry West is portrayed in a horrific way? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.